Hello and welcome to another episode of AppStories. Today's episode is brought to you by Claude by Anthropic. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing really well. You know what? It got really nice here for a little while. I spent some time outside, worked outside, and then it got cold again. So
no.
I don't know what's going on anymore. This is like, I'm done with winter, Tici. I'm done. I'm just finished. So.
Yeah, it's nice here, but I don't want to jinx it. So.
Yeah, I jinxed it. Last week was so nice. But anyway, enough of the weather, Federico. I need to kick things off with a mini topic because I am here to ride my favorite hobby horse, which is a theory I have.
A theory. Okay, I see. We're back on the theory. Okay.
Well, yes. We did it on Unwind, and Unwind wasn't really necessarily the right place for that. So given that this episode is coming out right before the March 4th Apple experience, and what looks like now, according to at least Mark Gurman, what might be multiple days of press releases with new products, I thought I would go over what I think is going on with this experience. Okay. And the thing of the matter is that John Gruber, I guess, heard from a reader who told him that they thought, you know what, I bet that the experience, that part of it revolves around F1 because the F1 season starts shortly after March 4th, I think on March 8th. So that got me thinking about something else that we had heard about because The Verge had reported in just one of their little short posts that the Apple Vision Pro is getting foveated streaming. And that's something we've talked about before with Brendan on NPC, Next Portable Console, about the Valve Frame, which is a VR headset that Valve has announced and delayed that was going to have the same technology, which, as I understand it, is different than, right now the Vision Pro already has foveated rendering, which is all done on device, which tracks your eyes and makes the sharpest part of the image right where you're looking. So it uses less power, less CPU and GPU to do that. And foveated streaming is similar, but it's streaming. And my big theory is that Apple's going to implement that for F1, that you'll be able to stream an F1 race, watch in your Vision Pro, and they are going to use foveated streaming to make that stream a lot smaller to allow it to be done in near or real time, which, that's my theory. What do you think?
No, I think there's something. I think you're onto something. I don't know about the details, but I think the timing is, it would be an awful coincidence. It's all... how's the expression? Where there's smoke, there's fire?
Yeah, and the thing with the Vision Pro these days is there's been most of the hype around the Vision Pro does revolve around various kinds of unique video experiences these days. When we get a press release from Apple or that sort of thing, it tends to be that kind of thing. And obviously, Apple has spent a lot of money on F1. They've been promoting it a lot on Apple TV. I don't know if you've seen it, but they're doing a lot of ads. Even had Idris Elba do a little thing before Hijack when I watched it that was like, hey, after you watch Hijack, go watch F1.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny. But anyway, that is my mini topic for today. We do have a main topic, though.
We do. We're talking about our Apple hardware wishes for 2026. Yeah. And obviously, there's it's very likely that by the time this episode comes out for regular members, we will already have some Apple hardware to talk about. And I kind of want to start there personally, because so one of the rumors is that Apple is going to finally announce this low-cost MacBook, which, knowing Apple, it's not going to be called a low-cost MacBook. It's going to be called the most affordable Mac ever or something like that. So this is strange because I am not going to buy that computer, but I'm also very excited about that computer. Because, obviously, I think I'm waiting for... I'm kind of cheating, John. I'm rolling two wishes into one.
Okay.
Personally, I think my next MacBook is going to be the rumored MacBook with a touch display that maybe is coming out by the end of 2026. So it's very likely that in 2026 we're gonna see MacBooks with an M5 Pro and M5 Max processors, but also at the end of 2026 maybe an M6 MacBook Pro with touch. So I think for me, my next computer is probably going to be that MacBook Pro with a touch display and maybe an OLED panel and all those things.
Sure.
But at the same time, I'm kind of excited about the idea of a return to form for an affordable MacBook that's maybe, I don't know, sub $800 and comes with colors. I don't know, there's something nostalgic, obviously, about the idea of colored MacBooks coming back, but also the idea of this MacBook having a phone chipset inside. Like the rumor is that it's going to have an A18 or an A18 Pro.
Right.
There's something very intriguing from my perspective about that. So even though I'm not going to buy it, I still wish that it's real and that it's actually coming out.
What do you think that does potentially to the iPad? Because I'm thinking about like the iPad Air, the iPad Pro, and iPad Pro, you're over $1,000. You're much more expensive than this rumored affordable MacBook, but you've got very similar technology inside. You've got a screen, you've got the keyboard. You add a keyboard to an iPad Pro or an iPad Air, and you very easily spend $1,000, which is hundreds more than what's rumored. I mean, what do you think that does to the iPad?
And also like how many more things you can do on macOS than iPad OS.
Yeah, even with a fairly, not an underpowered, but a modestly powered Mac.
Even if you just want to buy a MacBook for $800 and just run Claude code on it.
Well, that was where I was going next, which is I think that this is a Mac that, at least from what I gather from the rumors, this is the kind of Mac that is perfect for people who use a lot of web apps or use anything in the cloud like Claude Code or Codex or something like that.
I think there's something funny and also ironic about the strongest argument against an iPad Pro potentially being the lowest cost MacBook ever.
I know.
It
won't have touch. I mean, obviously there are things you can do with an iPad that you can't do with a Mac. But in terms of a regular computer type stuff, if I can get a $500 or $600 or even $700 Mac that has roughly the computing power of an iPad Air or an entry-level iPad Pro, I don't know. I mean, it seems like that's a big step up in terms of cost.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm very excited about that, and I'm also obviously very excited about the idea of a MacBook Pro with touch. I don't know what Apple is gonna do with touch on that computer. Like, is it just gonna be that sometimes you can touch the screen like you have been able to do on Windows laptops for a decade at this point? Maybe
Right.
That's just the lowest common denominator is gonna be you can also use your finger. And so many times, especially as a hybrid iPad Pro and MacBook Pro user, I find myself so many times accidentally touching the screen of my MacBook Pro. So having that gesture be officially recognized, I mean, it's gonna be nice. But also, is that it? Like, knowing Apple, are we sure they're not gonna do nothing to accommodate macOS for touch input? It seems strange from my perspective to imagine that Apple is just going to slap a touch recognizer below the display and call it a day.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something about it. And most likely that's going to be my next computer. So I really hope that's coming out this year instead of next year.
I hope so. I tend to think the end of this year is still a little too soon, personally.
Maybe.
But we'll see. We'll see. I would like to have that MacBook Pro too. Mm-hmm. I've been thinking a lot about Ramageddon, of course, and we talked about this again on NPC last week, which is that the cost of memory and storage is getting incredibly high, and it is eventually going to impact Apple. Apple is a big company. They've obviously, I think, at least according to reports, they've stockpiled a certain amount of memory at certain prices. So they can also, because they're a company that has software and services, can kind of take some margin away from one area and make it up in other areas. But I do expect that if the shortage and the cost of memory and storage persists for a long time, that it's eventually going to impact Apple. And one way I think that they can deal with that, and I'd like to see them deal with it, is to focus on other kinds of hardware and focus on other kinds of hardware features. Like, for instance, in these laptops, I mean, there's all kinds of things Apple could do. And some of them are way out there. I mean, one thing that I've been thinking about with the laptops is, Apple's got a lot of technology that they've developed for the Vision Pro. why not have that extra thing besides touch, Federico, be the ability to use gestures to interact with your MacBook using the camera that's built right into the laptop? I think that would be a really cool thing to do. Plus, I'd like to see nanotexture just literally everywhere. I want to see it on the iPhones. I want to see it trickle down to the more budget-friendly Macs, not just on the MacBook Pro. There's a lot of things that I think Apple could do to try to distinguish some of these computers in ways that are other than with the usual specs of things like amount of memory and amount of storage that would attract new users to them. And I don't know. I think we'll see. I think the other aspect of this, and we're talking mainly about hardware, but I think software is part of the story too, because I think Apple should be right now, hopefully, already optimizing their OSs and their built-in apps for minimizing the overhead so that people can get more out of these laptops. Because if the prices really do creep up substantially, I think Apple's better off riding it out by keeping a working Mac in someone's hands, even if they aren't upgrading, than it is to having them switch to something that's cheaper or from another company that is more affordable too. So
yeah. What about the Studio Display? So that's another thing that's on tap for next week or this week's announcements. Personally, I'm totally fine with my OLED gaming monitor that last week or 2 weeks ago, as we talked about, I swapped my Mac Studio with the Mac Mini. It was just plug and play from a display point of view. I just had to connect 2 cables and I was done. But I know, sometimes I do miss the Studio Display. It's nice.
No, there's just little touches that are very nice because it integrates so nicely with the OS.
Yes. The design is obviously much better than this. I mean, I love the panel, but this display is an abomination. I mean, it's ugly. It's made of plastic. It's black.
Mine can project a spotlight beneath it in gamer colors.
It's awful. It's honestly awful, but the panel is awesome and it's incredible. It's fantastic for gaming and it's fantastic for the multiple inputs. So it sounds like Apple is just going to do the bare minimum. It sounds like they're going to bump the Studio Display from 60 hertz to 90 hertz, not even 120. And I very much doubt that Apple is going to have actual, HDMI or USB-C inputs coexisting in the back of the display.
Their computers have HDMI ports on them. I mean, come on.
Look, I'm not John Turnus, okay?
I know.
Take it up to that guy. I'm just saying, I assume at this point you're no longer in the market for a Studio Display?
I'm not. I mean, I hope I don't regret having bought this display, but I really like it. I mean, it's not 5K, it's 4K, but it's OLED. It's 240 hertz. It's a really good display, and it's a lot more versatile than a Mac Studio display or a Studio display. So yeah, the things that I want from a Studio display are high refresh rate, more ways to plug things in, so it's more than just plugging in a Mac or an iPad, all that kind of stuff. But I think you're probably right. I don't know that we're going to get it. I think we may get multiple sizes. I think at a minimum, Apple ought to have a 32-inch option. I think that
I could see a Studio Display and Studio Display Pro, maybe.
Yeah, I don't really get going to 90 hertz. I mean, that seems like such a weird in between. That doesn't. I mean, it'll be better, but they ought to go up to 120, and it needs to be a brighter panel too.
Yeah.
So I think brightness, refresh rate, and size. Those are the 3 things I think will probably be tweaked. This episode of AppStories is brought to you by Claude from Anthropic. I had this incredible experience with Claude this morning where we do a lot of our editing through GitHub to track versions and allow our editors to review each other's work. And we get back something that when you review it in GitHub Desktop, it looks fine for developers, but it's not great for writers. So I asked Claude to build me an app. And within 15 minutes or so, Claude had created an artifact that did exactly what I wanted. It showed the changes from one version of a document to another, all color-coded and very easy and readable for someone who is more interested in prose than in code syntax. It was fantastic, and I'm going to work on it some more and make it into a full-blown web app and not just an artifact. But the thing is, I have the prototype now. I know it's possible, and I know exactly what I want. So I had it create a plan, which I'll drop into Claude Code and use to fill out all the details later this weekend. And that really goes to something that's important about Claude. Claude is the AI for minds that don't stop at good enough. It's the collaborator that actually understands your entire workflow and thinks with you. Whether you're debugging code at midnight or strategizing your next business move, Claude extends your thinking to tackle the problems that matter. If you're a developer spending half your day on tasks you wish you could just hand off, well, Claude Code runs in your terminal, reads your code base, and can take on things like writing tests, refactoring, or debugging without you hand-holding it through every step. If you're considering adding a tool to your setup, you want to know that it works with everything that you're using. That's why it's so useful that Claude connects to all of your professional tools, things like GitHub, Jira, HubSpot, Notion, Google Workspace, and loads more. For me, some of my go-to tools that I'm using with Claude are GitHub, Notion, and things like Gmail and Google Calendar. Plus, you could forget about basic web searches with Claude because it's excellent at deep research. That means you can dig deeper with extensive sources, proper citations, and do it in a fraction of the time. I was recently doing a retrospective on old App Store games from the earliest days of the App Store, and Claude helped me find a wealth of information about this subject. It's perfect for that kind of deep, long-form research. Ready to tackle bigger problems? Get started with Claude today by going to claude.ai/AppStories. That's claude.ai/AppStories to check out Claude Pro, which includes access to all the features mentioned in today's episode. Claude.ai/AppStories. Our thanks to Claude by Anthropic for their support of the show.
Yeah. Obviously, on my list of hardware wishes for this year, there's the iPhone Fold. Like that's my big one. I still love, and I actually want to work on a story at some point, like a review of the iPhone Air. 6 months, more than 6 months removed from the iPhone Air at this point. Mm-hmm. I really do love my iPhone Air, and I really do love the fact that it's so thin and light and portable, and that it's basically replaced my iPad in bed when I want to just get some reading done or watch some videos before I go to sleep. So the idea of an iPhone Fold being a thin and light device that, however, I can also unfold into an iPad mini, that's been my dream for many years at this point. And I really hope that Apple can deliver on the software front. That's my biggest concern. I have no doubts that they can come up with a really sturdy hinge design or a great looking display. I think I'll be fine using Touch ID instead of Face ID, which is one of the rumors, one of the limitations of this upcoming device. Yeah. I think I'll be fine with all of that. I'm fine with just the one camera on the iPhone Air. I've learned to live with it. I think I'll be more than fine with 2 cameras on the iPhone Fold. It's the software that I find concerning. I really hope that there's just like the MacBook with Touch, I hope that they have a special trick up their sleeves when it comes to, when you open it up, it's going to be iPadOS, it's going to be iOS Plus or whatever they want to call it. Or is it just going to be, again, are they going to do the bare minimum? Like, yes, when you open it up, you can do split view and slide over. Or is it something new? Is it something different? Because I do think that it would be such a wasted opportunity to do no multitasking whatsoever. Like when you open it up, you can still use one app at a time, but it's bigger. That would be the worst case scenario.
That would be terrible.
The middle scenario would be you can do split view and slide over just like on an iPad mini. There's no stage manager. It's just old school split view and slide over. And then there's the good and best scenarios where it's like it's iPadOS with some features removed, but it's the full-blown iPadOS. And so you do have certain iPadOS features like external keyboards, for example, right? Or a trackpad. Like, will you be able, you sent me an article a while back, I think a couple of weeks ago. Will you be able to take an iPhone Fold, prop it up on a desk and use an external keyboard and trackpad? Will you be able to connect it to an external display?
Right. No, those are definitely my questions. To me, it's like, yes, there's a lot with the OS that can be done, but I think the accessory story is going to be just as important. I think that I've used a lot of portable keyboards, like the Keys to Go 2 that Logitech makes is very good. And Alison Johnson just did a big story about this on The Verge, where she was using, I think she was using a Samsung, I forget which Samsung model she was using, but she was using one of the Samsung foldables. And she ultimately settled on that Logitech keyboard, which is very good. It runs on like watch batteries and it can last months like that. And it's very light, very thin. But it doesn't solve the issue of propping up the phone very well, which I think is the kind of place where Apple could use some of its hardware design to really come up with a good solution to have this on the go where you could actually carry that keyboard with you and use it on the go without taking up a lot of space in your bag or something. Maybe it's not pocketable, but it could be something that you could take with you and not be really heavy and actually get a real iPad type work done on it. I think on the software side, the idea of having, I'm still clinging on to our long held hope for a shelf app that Apple makes. I think it's something this small that a shelf would work really well.
I think so. I mean, any kind of clipboard manager or a UI for drag and drop. I mean, that would be lovely.
Yeah.
The only other thing I will mention in terms of stuff that I actually want, and there's plenty of stuff. Like, actually, I have two more. Sorry, John.
I got a couple too.
I do want to see what they do with the Mac Studio. The dream of an M5 Ultra Mac Studio this year, that maybe you can daisy chain with Thunderbolt to an M3 Ultra Mac Studio, and using something like EXO, for example, which
we saw the demo of.
Saw the demo and the idea of running big Chinese models like Kimi K2 or Minimax 2.5, totally locally on device.
What do you think that'll cost nowadays with RAM prices going up? I mean, that could get really. A loaded M3 Ultra is what, like 4,000 to 5,000, something like that.
What? Fully spec'd?
Yeah.
So if you want, if you're just talking about RAM, I think you're right. But if you're talking about RAM and storage, a fully spec'd Mac Studio, it's something like $15,000.
Oh gosh, I'd forgotten. You get two of them. Get two of them.
Yeah, no, but like that's the dream computer, right? M5 Ultra, stack it up with Thunderbolt to an M3 Ultra, and deploy a giant model with no quantization, totally locally on device. Man, that would be something. No, but I was gonna mention, I want to see what they do with the Home Hub, with the HomePod with the screen, whatever it's gonna be called. The new design for the HomePod that has a display and that has a camera. I was thinking about this the other day in the context of, it sounds like the rumored OpenAI device, the result of the collaboration with Johnny Ive. It sounds like the first product out in 2027. It's not going to be a wearable device, but it's going to be a product for the home, like a smart speaker with the camera.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, my first reaction was, oh, that's boring. But then I thought about it, and I realized just how many times I grab my phone when I'm in the kitchen or when I'm around the house, and I show something to ChatGPT, like something that I'm cooking or something that I'm supposed to fix or some kind of tool. And I was thinking, wouldn't that be nice to just grab the thing that you want to show and walk up to the accessory and be like, hey, can you see this? Can you, like, asking question to a physical device somewhere on a desk or on a kitchen table or on a countertop? And from that perspective, it makes more sense. And Apple has been saying a lot of things lately, especially Tim Cook has been saying a lot of things about visual intelligence, right? That they feel like they can provide a compelling product in terms of AI utility when it comes to visual intelligence. And I think there's something to that idea. So this product, if it's true and if it's coming out and if it's based on the new Siri, when eventually it launches, the idea of it having a camera that maybe can recognize things and maybe can also have the new Siri powered by Gemini with the app intents, that I'm mildly excited about, I would say.
That'd be interesting. I'm a little cool on the idea of having always on cameras in my house. It's one thing when you're using your phone and you're being very intentional about it. It's another thing that having the AI spying on you all day. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. All right, I want to go way out there, Federico. I want to imagine a world where Apple decides to expand its hardware accessories and use its audio engineering expertise to create both monitor headphones and a microphone, and pair that with a new addition to the Creator Studio, which is a podcasting app for recording and editing podcasts. I think Apple just announced this deal where they're going to be streaming video using HLS and allow podcasters to use that. I mean, finally waking up to what's going on with Spotify and YouTube in the podcast world. I think that there's more that could be done to help solidify its place in the creative process, just the production process, than just the delivery mechanism, which is what that announcement was about, by having tools to make it easier for people to do this stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they could even bake in app intents, right? You could do all kinds of automations. They could kind of go after the Stream Deck market. I don't know. There are things that could be done.
Oh, the Stream Deck would be interesting.
Yeah, can you imagine like Apple getting into more input devices? I mean, especially if memory and storage is going to cost a lot, why not get into high margin accessories? Why not finally redesign the mouse or create some kind of Stream Deck or other input device that people can use with their Macs?
Which will be way overdue also. Especially, the Magic Mouse and the Magic Keyboard have been untouched 10 years, I want to say.
Well, other than the USB-C port, yeah.
Other than that, yeah. Do you have anything else in terms of hardware that you really wish for?
I think that there's more, and it's kind of a combo hardware-software thing where Apple could do more with its Home Hub. I mean, right now the Home Hub for Apple is the HomePod, and for most people, probably the HomePod Mini. And the HomePod Mini is good, but not great in terms of its quality of sound. It's not, you can't really directly connect them up to a Mac, which would be nice if you could use them as speakers connected to a Mac. I think that the Home app is okay, but I feel like there's room that smart home stuff is one of those areas where there's room for Apple to kind of use its engineering and software expertise to just make it easier. I think too often these things become frustrating for people, and so they don't use them as much as they could, whether it's lights or door locks or sensors of different kinds. And I don't feel like the Home app or just the underpinnings of it have gotten enough attention. It just did migrate finally to the entirely to the new system that's been out for a while, but finally the cutoff date came like a week or two ago. And maybe now is the time to take stock, now that everybody's on this new system, and find ways to improve it and make it more robust.
Yeah. Well, maybe, when this episode comes out, we will already have new hardware.
Yeah, and I'm getting ready for one of those weeks. You know what I mean?
I think it's going to be one of those weeks. I think it's going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all announcements back to back. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I really hope that... I'm curious about that low-cost MacBook.
I am too. And I was going to say I could see one of the things that I've been thinking about doing is going back to an M1 MacBook Air for a while, just to see what it's like. Like, how well has that lasted since it was introduced? I mean, we still have one in the house, and I use it from time to time, but not very often. And I'd like to see, like, for things like we were talking about, like working with Claude Code or Codex or something, or Notion or whatever it is, see how well I could live on that kind of Mac today. And I'm very curious, like, how this new MacBook, if it exists, will compare in terms of its performance compared to that M1 MacBook Air. Are they going to be roughly the same? Is it going to be better? Kind of where is it going to fall in the spectrum of things?
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see what's going to happen.
We will. Well,
we're gonna talk. John had a fun topic for AppStories Plus.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about our top 3 use cases for AI.
Yep.
We talked a lot about AI. We talked a lot about AI over the past few months.
Yeah.
Big picture, but this idea of sharing our top 3 use cases, very practical things that we do, I think is an interesting angle.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it's been a while. We've kind of settled into patterns, I think, both of us.
I think so.
And different patterns. And I think it'll be, here are like things that we think, they're not just experiments. These are things that actually work for us today. So that's what we're going to talk about. And thanks again to Anthropic and Claude for sponsoring this episode of the show. You can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net, and we're on social media. Just look for Federico. He's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.